Well, my day went completely sideways. All my plans went haywire. So I figured I'd do a little talk on the trials and tribulations of coming up with a new cartridge case. Basically, I was tasked with making a real hot rod 270. And I decided to do something I've been fiddling with for a long time, which is running a 300, well, forget what I just said, running a WSM reamer in deep enough to accept RUM brass. WSM brass is okay, but the best stuff you can get is Winchester, which is not perfect. So that's one of the limitations of the WSM. RUM is even worse. Lapua doesn't make anything good. So my first big Wildcat, when I say big, I've done a lot of Wildcats, and big. This is, I guess, the first Wildcat that I would call big. This is a blown out 338 Lapua. That's a big case. At the time I thought it was going to be big enough, it was going to be sufficient, it was going to be all that. And it's a definite improvement over the factory Lapua case, which has some real problems. But it's the biggest problem I have with it is this enormous bolt head. As you make a bigger and bigger bolt face, if you don't make the tenon on the barrel correspondingly bigger, you get more and more flex in the chamber, you get more and more disruption of the threads, and you get more and more bolt thrust. The big bolt face, number one, makes a lot more square inches to push against for separating that joint that I'm so obsessive about. And number two, it robs from the metal surrounding it on the tang. It's kind of the same reason that a little 6BR case, I have one cut away here, just happened to be laying here, to show the big meaty thick case head, the small primer pocket, which leaves a lot of support meat. Small primer pocket, small flash hole, which meters less gas in. So basically it's got more meat. When you go to a bigger primer pocket, you take away from the support, the meat around it. That's why this little cartridge case will outperform. Essentially, it'll run with a 243. It'll beat a 243 in every circumstance, even a 243 Ackley in the real world. Out in pure accuracy, it will always win. Pure velocity, the 243 Ackley case will get a few firings at a slightly higher velocity, not negligibly higher, but then it'll wreck the case. This case will go on and on. So, I use that to illustrate the same problem. This great big 338 Lapua case has done me good stead. It's been a case that I've used and used and used. It's short, it's nice, holds up, I don't know, 100 and some grains. But that big case head is always a fight. It's hard to make a platform that's not big and meaty and heavy. So I got asked to look for a big the guy's like, hey, could you neck that thing down to your big 338 McCallum down to 270? And I said, well, yeah, I could. As I said somewhere in another episode, I guess somebody just came out with a cool new 270 bullet. So anyway, I thought this through and I decided, nope, I'm going to start a new, it's not really a Wildcat, because all I'm doing is running my fat, sharp-shouldered WSM reamer in deep enough to take RUM brass. Now the problems are the RUM brass. So I measured up a bunch of ADG brass, I measured up some ADG edge brass, I measured up different brands. But first I figured I had to test concept. So I took a factory 300 RUM barrel, just to throw away, something out of my bucket here, and I ran my 300 WSM reamer in. Notice the square shoulder on this? This is like, that right there is a 300 WSM, but it's way longer. So I took this thing and I ran that reamer in. Let's see if I can move my focus up here a little bit so you can see this better. You can start to see the fat buttedness there. So this was the test of concept. This is a 300 WSM reamer run in. I built a couple of these, I fired them. This is the initial blowout. You can see the bulgeaciousness there. And I might get time to show you why that bulgaciousness is so cool. It's such a great feature. But anyway, this is the 300 WSM run in, and this is 300 RUM brass. And I fired it, and I went, okay, concept works. That's fine. Ordered a 270 reamer. In the meantime, I decided to call this whole line of cartridges the HELLBRNGR. And I decided, why not build a 338? So that's what I've been doing. I took this, my whole plan, as you've known, I've been documenting the build of a left-handed, it's an MPI stock with a left-handed action from, an Atlas action from Kelbley's. And so far I like the action, I like everything about it. Big old left-handed action, but I'm going through everywhere I go. Every time I turn the corner, there's another something that has to be dealt with. So now I've got these great cases. And I just figured, well, I'm going to document the way I do this. As I said, this is not really a Wildcat, but I have to start with how I set the reamer up and then go from there. So initially, I tested the concept by doing it in a 300. Concept worked fine, cases look good, everything is awesome. So I figured, well, now I'm going to test it a little further in a 338. So I decided to take this left-handed project I've got going and chamber it up in this. Now this is a violent cartridge. And that little light MPI, for some reason MPI doesn't sound right, but anyway, it's a lightweight little stock. I figured I might just snap that thing right off at the pistol grip. But aside from that, I figured, well, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm gonna take this, run it up to 338, and just see if I can. I've got a whole family of 338. I've got edges, I've got RUMs, I've got, of course, the 338 WSM, which is a beautiful little walk-around hunting cartridge. Been working with this McCallum for years. This is a great case. Got all the goodies on it. Just that big bolt face bugs me. So here we got a case that is the same capacity. It's going to do the same thing if I can get brass to hold up. So I went out and bought a bunch of ADG brass. I've actually bought, I think, every brand of 404 Jeffrey and 300 but let's not go on all the different things I've tried. I ended up just starting yesterday on designing this thing. I whipped a chamber into it and I have to start making brass. So I'm building this gun. I got to the chambering part of it. I chambered tight on 300 WSM. I'm sorry, let me back up. I chambered it to be tight on factory. Let me just grab these here. Factory 300 RUM brass. This is a 300 RUM case, and it headspace is up in here somewhere. I chambered it so it runs a tight ring. You crank it in, and this neck is just floating in here. Then I have to figure out how to get this thing opened up and blown out to size to accept this big 338 bullet. So I decided to go two ways. I chambered it in such a way that it's a tight fit on 300 RUM brass, number one. And also I got some ADG cases, which is what I have in my hand here. These are 338 edge cases from ADG. They ended up being a little fuzzy bit short. So I actually had to fire form them by significantly increasing the neck tension and fire forming with long seated bullets. So these have been fired now about, I don't know, 10 times, and they're finally getting pretty straight. They're just the first 3 cases I made. I'm holding them in my hand just to have a prop, something to keep my hands busy, and also to show you that this ADG brass is very consistent. It's blown out very nicely. Let me show you what I mean by consistent. But first of all, let's back up. I told you that I blew out 300 RUM brass. That's done by using clays. And the first one that I tried, you'll see here it says 40 too light. This is 40 grains of clays, which brings it up to about right in here. And it's too light because even though the case blew out and the shoulder popped pretty good, and you can see the head spacing ring there, the ring that it was head spacing on, at least I think you can see it. I might have to bring this camera up even closer for some of this. There's the head spacing ring. But it didn't have enough pressure here to blow the neck out to size. The neck is still about 30. We need to get it bigger. So I ran the, now I'm going to come back out. This focus thing is a little tricky, so I'll just try to talk through the focus and try not to mess your heads up too much. But I'm not a cameraman. I'll get by. So 40 grains, popped pretty good, but it didn't blow the neck out. So 40 grains I set aside. I went up to 43 grains and I got the perfect case. The neck is blown out. The shoulders are wicked sharp. It's got a nice, around the bottom here, we're showing a really nice, let's see, make sure I get in the light. Basically it's blown out to where, that's a good looking case. 43 grains. So I went up to 45 grains. 45 is too hot. Primer, wicked. I'm going to show you some pressure signs here. To those of you who know what pressure signs are, this will all begin to make sense to you. You'll see that you can read these just like you read a fired case. There's an ejector, an extractor cutout. Primer is very flat. So now let me come back here. I don't want to spend too much trying to describe to you what all's on here. Those that'll know what it is will know what it is. Trust me, this is too much pressure. The shoulders are good, but the case head got battered. So 45 grains of clay is in this case. But understand, I actually started with 36. The problem with brass is it work hardens quickly. You could hit it once and then that case is gone. So I took that 36 case, the first one, and I ran a mandrel into it and I decided to use it. I'm pulling this up now. Those are the 3 cases that are successful. That 45 is shootable, usable. Well, let me back up. The 40 is shootable, usable. The 43 is perfect. It's ready to go. The 45 is still usable, but it took a pretty good beating, so I don't even know if I'm going to use it. I might chuck it. But this case here was an original one that I did with 36 grains, my starting load, and it didn't get blown out at all. So I ran a mandrel into it, and I figured I'm going to test this case to destruction, which I did. This is the case that I took from 88 grains, because here's the next thing. You have to safely get a reamer set up. First of all, before I loaded this, I took those cases that I had blown out and I put them back in the chamber and I ran the Teslong in from the front to check this gap space. Remember that? That's on the videos. If you haven't seen it, go watch them. I run in and I look at this area. You can see the end of the chamber, you can see the gap space. So now I can see that I've got a case that fits in there nicely. It's got gap space, it's got neck clearance. I can tell that by feel and by measurement. So now I have a case. Understand, this is still like a Wildcat. This is still something, you don't just willy-nilly this stuff. If you get it too long or too short, it's going to bind, it's going to leak, it's going to all kinds of crap. So, I've done it enough that, boom, I blew those 30s out and they ended up with about 5 thousandths of gap space. Perfect. This is a perfect case. So I proceeded to take this thing out and go to town. Again, I don't have a starting load, so I figured I'd start with, I looked at 300 RUM, I looked at 338 RUM, 338 edge, all the different, my 338 McCallum is a similar capacity. I added all those up. Most of the stuff for the edge is on H3000 because that's what everybody likes. I happen to like Retumbo just because I have 30 or 40 pounds of it. I only have an 8-pounder or 2 of H1000. Not that I'm proud one way or the other, it's just Retumbo is something I'm used to. So I decided to use Retumbo, and I started at about 88 grains. I went to 90. Suffice it to say, I worked my way all the way up until this case. I go up, I fire, and I look at the results on the target, and oddly enough, in this case, the groups just kept climb, and they didn't go up or down or anything, they just climbed. But I went up pretty good thumps each time. Let's just say I went up a grain at a time. I was not real safe about it. Well, I was safe, but I was safe because I've done this a million times. I didn't do anything stupid. I'm checking the length, I'm making sure. Well, first of all, my reamer is set up in such a way I didn't really have to check the length, because after firing, this thing will barely accept a bullet. These, as you can see, this doesn't even slip over, and this is a fired case that I just set aside. These cases here, I've just seated the bullet back in them. I set the tolerances such that it's got something called a fitted neck, which means I don't ever have to do anything to it. Now, I realize there's a bunch of crap on the inner tube right now, a bunch of yahoos out there saying, quit neck sizing, don't neck size, neck sizing is stupid. Well, not neck size. Neck sizing is neither stupid nor not stupid. It's just the best way when you don't have the gear. Neck sizing alone, if your cases fit perfect and snug into your rifle, is as accurate as anything on the planet can be. For years, neck size only ruled bench rest. So anybody that says, stop neck sizing is stupid, is just an uninformed boob. He's an idiot. There's nothing wrong with not sizing the case. This case has never, none of these cases have been sized. I don't have a sizer. See, here's where, this is the reality versus some puss bucket out there daydreaming about how they're going to do something. This is how you really match stuff up. At this point, I don't have any dies. I don't have any sizers. I don't have anything. But yet, I'm shooting little groups out there, and I'm testing this thing because of the fact that I planned ahead, and I've got my necks set to such a place that I can just, not only do I not have to neck size unless they, I have chosen to neck size. I had to neck size these the first time to get enough neck tension on there to get them to fire, because the ADG 338 edge cases were just a little bit too short versus... Anyway, they're fired up now, they're good, and I have been firing these by just knocking out the primer, adding the powder charge, and seating the bullet, which seats with, I don't know, 10 pounds of pressure or something. It's tight enough that it's hard to set my heads. That's another whole thing. I used this case to set my overall length, to set my jump, to find my lands. I use this case for all kinds of stuff, and I slowly, incrementally worked it up. And this is how fat it came out. I'm spinning it and rolling it so that hopefully you can look at this and you can see the fatness. You can see just how much this thing blew out. This is like 15 thousandths over the base case. I don't know, it's big. But notice this as I spin it. Even this Remington case is very consistent around here, and I'll show you. That means that these cases are very consistent diametrically. That's a big deal. This fat butt case thing really allows you to call cases quick and dirty. It's kind of fun. I've heard people are running inside with mics and they're running dial indicators. They're trying to find out how to measure the brass thickness on the inside. First of all, I've talked about this before. When I blow these cases out, I put clays in there. I put in this case, when I go to blow out my Remingtons, I'm going to put in 43 grains of clays. And then I said I plug this. Well, I plug this and I say a pea size. What I means is I wad up a piece of paper towel round that slip fits into there. That way I get a consistent weight each time, in the same sense that every muzzle loader caliber has got a specific weight of round ball. This, just call a round ball of toilet paper. You dump your powder in here, you take your round ball of toilet paper to plug the end, go lay it in the bags, boom, shoot it out the window. That's exactly what I did. And don't let anybody ever tell you that shooting with the case laid down is somehow worse than shooting it straight up in the air. Again, this is stupid people talk. I've had people, in fact it was urban legend on the inner tube for years. 99 out of 100 people believed that however a case laid, it's laying on the bottom of the chamber, and boom, and it blows the top side out, because they would notice that cases are wider on one side than the other, and they're like, oh, it's the top side blowing out because it's laying there. Redneck logic is a infuriating thing. So no, it doesn't in fact do that. In simple fact, it blows out. And let me just show you something here. I've got some cases. These are cases from another project. This is I'm going to try to roll this around so that you can see that on one side the sizing goes all the way to the base, and on the other side it shows it's got a little Humpty bump. That means it blew out on this side, and this side is the thick side. Now watch this. I'm going to run this down onto my phone, and you're going to see what I'm talking about. This case has got a fat side, it's got a thick side, and you can tell it just when you roll it across the phone. See how it goes fast and slow? And in fact, it'll stop and rock back and forth. That's the thick side down. Now if I take a case, one of my match cases out of here, no matter how slowly I roll it, it doesn't do that. This one here has got a consistent ring all the way around the base of it. I don't know if you can see that, but this one, as opposed to this one, does not have a consistent ring. It's in fact got what I call a scrubbed side. It's got a really thick side. So one of the things that happens when you blow cases out like this is you're able to quickly and easily, and that's one of the things. I will say this ADG brass is very consistent at the base. I can spin these around. And these cases, by the way, when you roll them, you can't, this got a bullet in it, so it doesn't really do anything. But when you roll these, trust me, these are nice. So now I've got ADG cases and I've got Remington cases, and I was going to go out and shoot and do a whole exposition, but nope. I had a whole problem with my scope mounting procedure that I'll have to talk about, and I'll do that on another segment.